"Don't you dare touch my baby, you stupid black girl!" The scream cracked through the airplane cabin like lightning. Forks froze halfway to mouths, glasses trembled in manicured hands, and the soft hum of conversation died in an instant. Every head in first class turned toward the source of the outburst. Angela froze, her hand hovering inches from the squirming infant in the sleek leather seat across the aisle. She hadn't meant to get involved. She'd only noticed the baby's face turning red, lips puckering without sound, tiny fists thrashing desperately. She knew that look. The baby was choking. But now, instead of gratitude, she was staring into the furious eyes of Charles Whitmore. The Charles Whitmore, billionaire CEO, cover boy of business magazines, known for his perfect teeth and polished speeches about opportunity for all. And yet, right now, his perfect smile was gone. What stared back at Angela was pure disdain, the kind that said, "You don't belong here." "Sir," Angela said carefully, her voice steady, though her pulse thudded in her ears, "your son isn't breathing. Please let me—" Charles pulled the baby tighter against his chest. "You're a waitress. Do your job and stay out of mine." A hush swept the cabin. Somewhere in the back, a phone tilted discreetly upward. Angela's eyes flicked to the baby. His flailing slowed. His skin shifted to a dangerous shade. She didn't think. She moved. Angela lunged forward, scooping the baby from Charles's grip before anyone could stop her. Gasps broke out. A woman in pearls covered her mouth. Charles surged to his feet, his voice booming. "Give him back! You'll kill him!" But Angela had already turned the child over her arm, delivering sharp, rhythmic blows between his tiny shoulder blades. "Come on, baby. Breathe. Just breathe," she whispered, her voice breaking at the edges. 1, 2, 3. A wet gag. A sputter. Then a piercing cry that filled the cabin like music. The baby was alive. The collective exhale from passengers was almost as loud as the wail. Angela held the child close for a brief moment, her shoulders trembling. Relief washed over her in hot waves. She turned, gently handing him to the stunned flight attendant now standing frozen at Charles's side. But instead of relief, Charles's face twisted with rage. "You touched my son without my permission," he seethed, leaning inches from her face. "You'll regret this. I'll destroy you." Angela's breath caught, but her eyes stayed locked on his. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Never let them see you break." "I saved your son's life," she said simply. Phones kept recording. The tension thickened like fog. Who Angela really was. To Charles, Angela was the black waitress. Nothing more. He saw only her uniform from the diner, the trays she carried, the polite smile she wore while refilling coffee cups. But Angela was so much more than that. 32 years old, working 2 jobs to support herself and her aging mother. She carried herself with quiet dignity, the kind that comes from surviving life's blows without complaint. She dreamed of opening her own catering business one day, a dream that seemed impossibly far with the weight of bills and double shifts. This flight was supposed to be a rare gift to herself, a discounted ticket she'd almost refused to buy, until her cousin begged her to attend his wedding across the country. She hadn't asked to sit in first class. That upgrade was pure accident, thanks to an overbooked economy section. And now, because of it, she had been forced into a battlefield she never wanted. Who Charles really was, to the world, Charles Whitmore was the genius CEO. The visionary who donated millions to hospitals, smiled for cameras, and shook hands with politicians. But Angela had just met the man behind the mask. Arrogant, venomous, quick to belittle. And now the mask was cracking in front of an audience he couldn't control. "The cabin reacts, sir," an elderly man across the aisle said, his voice trembling with outrage. "That young lady just saved your child's life. We all saw it." Charles whipped his head toward him. "Stay out of this. You don't know what she's capable of." The man's chin lifted, defiant despite his frail frame. "I know she's the reason your son is breathing right now." Murmurs rippled through the rows. Some passengers nodded. Others stayed frozen, unwilling to challenge a man like Charles. Angela sat back, her hands trembling, her jaw tight. She wasn't naive. She knew men like Charles could ruin people like her with a single phone call. But something told her this time, things might be different. Too many eyes had witnessed the truth. Too many cameras had caught the moment. Still, the fear in her gut was real. Charles leaned down, his whisper sharp as a knife. "You think this ends with applause? I'll have lawyers waiting when we land. You'll wish you'd never touched him." Angela didn't flinch. Her voice came out quiet, steady. "Your son's alive. That's all that matters." But deep down, she knew. This was only the beginning. The baby's cries softened again as the attendant rocked him. Angela turned her gaze to the dark window, watching clouds drift past under the moonlight. Her hands still shook, though she kept them hidden in her lap. She had saved a child, yet she felt like she'd just stepped into the middle of a storm that could destroy her. And the storm's name was Charles Whitmore. What happened when the plane landed? That would shock everyone. The plane cruised steadily through the night sky, but inside the cabin, turbulence of another kind was brewing. Charles adjusted his cufflinks, his jaw set in stone. He looked like a man plotting, calculating. Every so often, his cold gaze flicked toward Angela, who sat stiffly in her seat, eyes forward, lips pressed tight. The baby rested now in the arms of the flight attendant, peaceful after the ordeal. Yet the cabin remained charged with unease, like the echo of thunder after lightning. Passengers whispered. Some glanced at Angela with gratitude. Others avoided her eyes altogether, afraid of being pulled into a fight they didn't want. But everyone kept stealing looks at Charles. The perfect CEO mask was slipping, whispers and warnings. The elderly man across the aisle leaned closer toward Angela. His voice was low, almost conspiratorial. "My name's Henry," he said gently. "I saw everything. Don't let him scare you." Angela's throat tightened. She offered a small nod. "Thank you. But men like him, they don't forget." Henry's gaze was steady. "Neither do men like me. And I have friends who still listen when I speak." Angela blinked at him. Who was this man? He looked fragile, but his voice carried weight, like someone used to being respected. Before she could ask, Charles's voice rang out, louder than necessary. "Excuse me," he called to the flight attendant. "I demand this woman be restrained. She attacked my child." Gasps spread again. Angela's stomach dropped. The attendant faltered, clutching the baby protectively. "Sir, with respect, we all saw—" "You saw her assault us!" Charles snapped. "She ripped him from my arms. That's kidnapping. I want her off this plane in handcuffs." Angela's pulse thundered. She looked around, at the recording phones, at the hesitant faces. Was anyone going to defend her? An unexpected voice. Then came a voice Angela hadn't expected. A woman in her 40s, seated 2 rows ahead, stood up. She wore a sharp business suit, and her tone was crisp, professional. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, her words slicing the air. "I'm an attorney. I witnessed everything. What this young woman did was a lawful act of emergency care. If you pursue this, it will not end well for you." Charles's face darkened. His nostrils flared, but the woman didn't waver. "In fact," she added, "I advise you to sit down and be grateful your son is alive, because if you continue this charade, you may find yourself facing charges of neglect." The silence that followed was electric. Charles adjusted his tie, lips curling into a cold smile. "You think you're clever, don't you? Do you know how many judges sit on boards I own? You don't know who you're dealing with." The lawyer raised her chin. "Neither do you." Angela's breath caught. For the first time since this nightmare began, a flicker of hope sparked in her chest. Angela's memory. Charles sat back down, fuming. Angela's mind wandered for just a moment. She remembered her mother's words again. "Baby, when you do the right thing, it won't always feel good. Sometimes the world punishes you for it. But dignity isn't about what they give you. It's about what you refuse to let them take." Angela clung to that now, gripping the armrest until her knuckles whitened. Charles plots. His revenge. Charles wasn't done. His whisper carried just far enough for Angela to hear as he leaned across the aisle. "You think these nobodies will protect you when we land? I'll have security waiting. My lawyers will eat you alive. By tomorrow, the only thing anyone will know about you is that you're a criminal." Angela's lips parted, but no words came. She stared out at the endless darkness beyond the window. She had saved his son, and now he was promising to ruin her life. But deep down, she knew. Truth had a way of surviving lies. The baby stirred again, letting out a small cry. The flight attendant hushed him, rocking gently. Angela exhaled, her body heavy with exhaustion and adrenaline. The lawyer in the suit gave her a reassuring nod. Henry, the elderly man, sat straighter, his eyes fixed on Charles like a silent guardian. For the first time, Angela realized she wasn't entirely alone. But what Charles had planned for her when the plane landed, that was something none of them could predict, and it would change everything. The plane hummed softly as it cut through the night sky, but in first class, the air was suffocating. Angela sat stiffly, her fingers twisted in her lap. Every time she dared glance up, she saw Charles's cold smirk, the kind of smile that promised ruin. But Angela wasn't the only one watching him. The lawyer in the suit kept sneaking glances at her phone. Angela suspected she was taking notes, perhaps even emailing herself a record of what was happening. Henry, the elderly man, hadn't stopped glaring at Charles since their exchange. It was as though he had appointed himself Angela's silent protector. Yet none of that changed the truth. Once this plane landed, Charles would unleash everything he had, and Charles never lost. A shift in the cabin, 2 hours into the flight, the cabin lights dimmed. Passengers began to settle in, closing their eyes, adjusting blankets. But Angela couldn't rest. She could still hear Charles's words ringing in her head. "By tomorrow, the only thing anyone will know about you is that you're a criminal." She shifted in her seat, trying to shake the thought. She reminded herself. She had done the right thing. She had saved a child. No amount of lies could change that. But then, her phone buzzed. She frowned, pulling it from her pocket. It was a text, an unknown number. "Angela, you don't know me, but I need to warn you. Charles is already moving against you." Her heart stopped. She looked around. Who on this plane could possibly have her number? Another message came seconds later. He called his assistant from the onboard Wi-Fi. "He's preparing a statement. By the time we land, the news will say you assaulted him and endangered his son." Angela's skin went cold. Charles's power, it was happening. She had known he'd try, but she hadn't thought it would be this fast. Charles wasn't just planning his revenge. He was executing it in real time, 30,000 feet in the air, and he had the power to make it stick. Angela imagined the headlines. Waitress attacks CEO mid-flight. She imagined the online comments, the hate, the endless spiral of lies that would swallow her life whole. Her throat burned. She turned her head slightly, whispering to the lawyer across the aisle. "He's already spreading lies about me. I just got a message." The woman leaned closer, her face grim. "Stay calm. Don't delete anything. We'll need every scrap of evidence." Angela clutched her phone like a lifeline. The baby cries. Again, as if on cue, the baby stirred once more, his thin wail piercing the tense cabin. The flight attendant quickly tried to soothe him, rocking gently, whispering soft nonsense words. Charles stood adjusting his jacket, his voice booming again. "See? He's still upset because of what she did. This will scar him for life. My lawyers will make sure everyone knows." Angela's stomach twisted. He was using his own child's cries as ammunition. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. Some rolled their eyes. Others whispered. But nobody spoke up this time. Nobody, except Henry. The old man rose slowly, using the armrest for balance. His voice shook, but carried through the cabin. "Enough," he said. "We all saw what happened. We all saw her save that child. And if you keep lying, I'll make sure the whole country hears it from me." Charles barked a laugh. "And who are you supposed to be?" Henry straightened, his frail frame suddenly commanding. "Henry Price, retired federal judge." The cabin gasped. Angela's eyes widened. That name, she knew it. He'd been on TV years ago, ruling in high-profile civil rights cases. A man respected across the nation. and now he was standing for her. Charles's smirk faltered for the first time. Angela's chest swelled with a fragile hope. She wasn't powerless, not with people like Henry and the lawyer in her corner. But Charles wasn't finished. His eyes narrowed, calculating, dangerous. If anything, Henry's revelation only made him more determined. Because men like Charles didn't back down, they destroyed. And what he did next would turn the entire flight upside down. The silence after Henry's declaration was thick enough to choke on. Passengers stared at him, wide-eyed, whispering to each other. A retired federal judge, someone who couldn't be dismissed as a nobody. Angela felt a small rush of relief. For the first time since this ordeal began, the balance seemed to tip in her favor. But Charles Whitmore wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat, not even at 30,000 feet. He smiled, slow and venomous, the kind of smile that made Angela's stomach twist. "Well, Judge Price," he said smoothly, "I had no idea you were aboard. What a delight." His tone dripped with false charm, but the ice in his eyes never thawed. Henry didn't waver. "Don't think you can bully your way through this. I know your type, Whitmore. I've seen men like you destroy lives with lies, but not tonight." The passengers erupted in quiet murmurs. Angela could almost feel their unease shifting, some siding with Henry, others shrinking deeper into their seats. Charles adjusted his tie, then turned his gaze back to Angela. "You think this changes anything? You saved my son? Congratulations, but by the time we land, everyone will believe you endangered him. I already have my team drafting the press release." Angela's breath caught. She remembered the text. He had called his assistant. It was happening already. "Charles takes control." He raised his voice so the whole cabin could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply sorry you've had to witness this disturbance. I assure you, my son is safe. But let's be clear. This woman ripped him from my arms. My lawyers will handle the matter when we land. Thank you for your patience." It was polished, professional, the kind of speech cameras loved. If not for the witnesses, Angela might have doubted herself. A murmur of uncertainty swept the cabin. Angela's chest burned. She wanted to scream, to shout the truth. But her mother's voice echoed in her head. "Never let them see you break." So, instead, she lifted her chin and said evenly, "Your son is alive because of me. No speech will change that." Phones tilted again. Some passengers caught her words. Others whispered, their loyalties shifting like sand. The baby becomes the center. The baby whimpered again, small and restless. The flight attendant cradled him, carefully, her expression torn. "Sir," she said softly, "perhaps it would be best if you let your son rest for now. He's been through a lot." Charles's smile cracked for a fraction of a second. "Give him to me." The attendant hesitated, then obeyed. The baby fussed in Charles's arms, his tiny cries sharp and tired. Angela's heart ached. That little boy had no idea he was being used as a prop in his father's war. She bit the inside of her cheek, forcing her tears down. The lawyer intervenes. Woman in the business suit, the lawyer, stood abruptly. "Enough," she said firmly. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm documenting every word you say. When this plane lands, you'll have more to worry about than your press release. Witnesses, video evidence, a federal judge. You're not untouchable." Charles's lips curled. "I admire your confidence, but you're underestimating how easily—" "I can buy silence. Not mine," the lawyer shot back. "And not his." She gestured toward Henry. Angela's chest tightened. For the first time, she wasn't alone. Charles escalates, but Charles wasn't finished. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing, and his voice carried a dangerous edge. "If you all insist on protecting this waitress, then let's put it to the test. Stewardess." The head flight attendant hurried over, nervous. "Call the captain," Charles demanded. "Tell him a passenger attacked my child. I want her restrained until we land." Angela's blood ran cold. The attendant froze. "Sir, do it!" Charles barked, his voice booming through the cabin. "Or I'll see to it that your airline never recovers from the lawsuit I file tomorrow." The attendant's hands trembled. She glanced between Angela, the lawyer, And Charles. Angela's stomach twisted. If they put her in restraints now, the narrative would be sealed. Every passenger would remember her as the one who had to be subdued. She clenched her fists. Was this how dignity was stolen? Not in one brutal strike, but in a slow suffocation of lies? The attendant lifted the phone, hesitating, her eyes flicking to Angela one last time. The cabin held its breath. Would they restrain her? Would Charles win after all? Angela's heart pounded, her future hanging in the balance. And then, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. No, you're not touching her. The voice rang out clear, steady, commanding. Every head turned. It was Henry, the retired federal judge, standing taller than his years should have allowed. His silver hair caught the cabin lights, his presence undeniable. I will personally testify that this woman saved that baby's life, Henry said, his voice booming across the rows. And if anyone dares restrain her, you'll be complicit in a false accusation, something I will not hesitate to bring before a court. The flight attendant froze, phone in hand. Slowly, she lowered it. Relief flickered across her face. Angela's knees nearly buckled. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt the crushing weight lift, even just a little. The cabin unites. The lawyer in the aisle spoke up again, louder now. She's right, I'm recording this. And so are half the passengers. You try to smear her, Mr. Whitmore, and you'll find every second of your lie unraveling on national news before your jet even taxis. Other passengers shifted in agreement. One woman lifted her phone high. I got it all on video. A man near the back added. She saved that baby. I saw it with my own eyes. The tide was turning. For the first time, Charles's face faltered. His mask of polished control cracked, and the rage beneath it burned through. You fools, he hissed. Do you know who I am? Yes, Henry said evenly. And that's exactly the problem. The baby's cry. The baby in Charles's arms began to cry again, louder this time, distressed, inconsolable. Charles tried bouncing him, but the infant only wailed harder. Angela's chest clenched. Her instincts screamed at her to step in, but she held back. Would Charles twist it again if she reached out? The flight attendant gently approached. Sir, maybe I should— Don't touch him, Charles snapped. The baby shrieked louder. Tiny fists flailed. His cries pierced the cabin, and even the passengers winced. Finally, Henry stepped forward. His voice softened, not for Charles, but for the child. He doesn't need a showpiece father right now. He needs calm. Angela inhaled deeply. She couldn't stay silent any longer. Let me, she said softly. The entire cabin watched as Charles's jaw clenched. He hesitated, torn between pride and desperation. The baby's wails grew unbearable. At last, with a muttered curse, he shoved the infant into Angela's arms. The quiet victory. The moment the baby touched her chest, he quieted. His tiny sobs slowed, his fists unclenched. He nestled against her uniform, finding the calm Charles could never give him. The cabin sighed in collective relief. Angela rocked him, gently, whispering soothing hums. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't even meet Charles's glare, because this wasn't about winning. It was about protecting what was innocent, and everyone saw it. The CEO exposed. The lawyer's voice cut the silence. Mr. Whitmore, your actions tonight will follow you. You threatened a woman who saved your child, tried to smear her name, and intimidated crew and passengers. When we land, I'll be contacting the FAA and the press. Henry added. And I'll be contacting some old friends in high places. Your influence has limits, Charles. Tonight, you've crossed them. Charles sputtered, searching for control, but nothing came. For once, power didn't bend the room to his will. The people had chosen the truth, and Angela stood at the center, not as a victim, but as the quiet hero who never let hatred steal her dignity. Landing as the wheels touched, down the baby slept peacefully in Angela's arms. Passengers whispered blessings, some even patting her shoulder as they disembarked. Charles stalked off the plane first, phone glued to his ear, rage simmering beneath his polished exterior. But no one followed his lead. Cameras stayed on Angela. When she finally stepped onto solid ground, Henry was beside her. You held your head high. That's what people will remember. Angela smiled faintly, exhaustion in her bones but pride in her heart. I just did what was right. Henry nodded. And that's why you won. Epilogue. 1 week later. News headlines swept the nation. Black waitress saves. CEO's baby mid-flight. While he tried to destroy her. Clips of the passengers' videos went viral. The baby's cries, Angela's calm defiance, Henry's unwavering authority. It all became a symbol. Charles Whitmore faced a corporate investigation. His polished reputation was fractured. And Angela? She didn't want fame. She went back to her diner job, apron tied, smile ready. But now, strangers came in just to meet her. Some hugged her. Some left tips big enough to cover a week's rent. She hadn't just saved a child. She'd reminded people what dignity looked like in the face of cruelty. Final reflection. Racism tried to silence her. Power tried to crush her. But Angela never let them steal her truth. And in the end, the world saw it. What about you? What would you have done if you were Angela? Stand tall or stay silent?